Thank you so very much for being here with us. My name is Nana Jumti. My pronouns are she, her, wonu in the Tree language of Ghana, which is where my family is from. I was born here in the United States, but like a Toyota made in Kansas, I continue to be from Ghana. Still from Ghana, right here. A Ghanaian girl right here in the US. I am the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, also known as BAJI. BAJI is a Black national organization that fights for the rights of Black migrants and African Americans, and we do so by advancing racial justice and migrant rights. We are located in New York is our administrative headquarters, but we're also in Washington, D.C., we're in Miami, we're in Atlanta, we're in Houston, we're in Los Angeles, where I am today, we're in the Bay Area of California, and we have staff and team members that are in Minneapolis as well as Wichita. And that's why we want to know, where are you from? Where are you at? How do we know where our family is? By asking, where are you at? Where are you located? So please feel free to share that information in the chat. I'm also here in my position as president of BAJI Action, and BAJI Action is our C4. It is the first national C4 that is fighting for the rights of Black migrants and African Americans, and we are so pleased to be launching this in Baji's 20th year. Baji at 20, don't we look lovely? Baji at 20 started in 2006 by Black people from the continent of Africa, from the Caribbean, and from these United States who understood that immigration was a racial justice issue and that racial justice is an immigrant rights issue, and wanted to make sure that we were talking about all of it. So we're really pleased to be here in this 20th year, in this fight, locking arms with you all, doing what needs to be done on the road to Black liberation. So, again, thank you so much to all of you who have joined. You found yourself in a safe place. You found yourself in a place of love, of a place of care, and a place where we are continuing the work that our ancestors have engaged in to build power, to build the power that we need to build the world that we deserve. I want to make sure that as we are looking at why we are here, that we're clear about what it is that we want to get done in this moment. This is a moment that is really critical. We know that we are in a contest for power. When I say we, I'm talking about Black people, of which we are amongst. So I'm hoping that if you've joined this and you are a Black immigrant, that you realize that you, as Black, you're part of the Black people that we're talking about in the United States. And this is a moment in which we have a contest, a fight for power that is happening between those who are white supremacist, those who are authoritarian, those who are fascists, those of the Epstein class, the billionaires who feel that they can prey upon and spy on us all, and the rest of us. And you may not know, it's not necessarily obvious. They don't teach it in curriculum all over the world, including our countries. They barely teach it in the school systems here in the United States. Some of us had to get to college before we could get the information. But when we're looking at who in this country has been the leaders of that fight against all of those forces I just described, the forces of racism, the forces against the working class, the forces against women, against queer folks, against children, against the elderly, against the disabled, and all those of us who are marginalized. That who has led that fight, who has given us the blueprint on that fight. From the first times that folks were dragged, snatched, and brought to this country in chains have been Black people. And so we who are here are part of that legacy. And we are looking today at how some of us are already engaged, which I'm sure includes so many of you who are on right now, and how some of us want to be engaged in this fight as part of this legacy to fight for Black freedom in this country, which also means Black freedom around the world. And we understand that while Black Americans have been the leaders of this fight, that we who have come here not on ships as part of the Mafa, as part of this evil trade, that we who came here looking for another way, that we also have been part of this fight, particularly as we look at the civil rights movement, but even before, right? And so when we look at that song, Lift Every Voice and Sing, written by two brothers whose mother was from the Caribbean, when we think about the fight of Marcus Garvey and Madame Kofi, one from Jamaica, one from Ghana, fighting for Black liberation in this country, that also is a part of our legacy. And as we think of those that you'll hear from today, folks like Dr. Stacey Grant, Amara Enya, Nse Ufot, Dawda Sese, right? And so many others. You hear that continued fight by those of us who may not have 400 years in this country, but who understand that our present and our futures are connected and who are committed to making sure that we are part of this Black liberation journey. And so, as we are looking at this issue of power and we look at the issue of voting, often you have people that want to talk about voting not really being a part of power, right? Not really understanding that voting is a part of power. And we want to make sure that we're clear, that we know that even though voting is not the whole thing, and no one on here thinks that, no one you're going to hear from thinks that all of the power that we need is going to come from voting. But we also understand, as Louise Little's son teaches us, the great Malcolm X, son of Louise Little from Guyana, or Grenada, excuse me. We also know that we have to get our freedom by any means necessary, and that we will not give up any arenas of power. And the arena of power that is voting, the arena of power that is electoral power, that is a very important arena. And that's the reason that they are doing their best, those who are opposing us, those who we are fighting, to take that out of our hands. And so we'll talk more about how we get engaged. We'll talk more about why it's important for us to be engaged, both from the national level and from the local level. We're going to hear from people that are strategizing and working on how voting power is part of the block of this consolidation of power by those demonic forces that are coming against us. And I say that half joking. And how it is part of the way that we build the power that we need to block their efforts to control the decisions over our lives and to control the resources that we give in our taxes and in our energy and in our time, as well as build the world that we need and deserve. So if you know that voting power is a part of how we do that, show that. Put it in the chat. Let's see an emoji for those of us that are on here that understand that, yes, voting power, Black voting power is one of the ways, one of the tools in the toolbox that we have to be able to grab, to hold on to, and in some cases, and we've done it, to expand who has access to that electoral power. Before we go into the conversations with our really fabulous panelists, talk about the national, and then talk about what's happening in various localities and states, I want to make sure to give us just a little bit of time to talk through what has happened to bring us to this point where we have to have this emergency family meeting, right? Why are we here at this time versus 4 months ago, 6 months ago, when we've had other conversations, but maybe not one so urgent? We know that this country has worked tooth and nail to keep Black people from being able to exercise electoral power. We know that when Black folks were freed, when enslaved Africans became African Americans through the 14th Amendment, that there was also the 13th Amendment that addressed the issue of enslavement itself and who could be still considered a slave. And we all know the loophole in there. And then we also know that we had the 14th Amendment. They gave people the right, birthright citizenship, the right to citizenship by birth. And then we had the 15th Amendment. They gave the right to vote and the right to hold electoral office. And that initially, when these amendments to the US Constitution, called the Reconstruction Amendments, when they came into fruition that and were enacted, that so many Black people, because in some places we outnumbered white people 5-1, right? And so we went to vote and we elected people into office. In places like South Carolina, in places like Mississippi, places throughout the South, Black people, newly freed people, became state senators, right? Got positions throughout the machinery of the electoral process, and that there was a white backlash. And that backlash came through the state, through the poll tax, through, can you count the jelly beans? Some of you I know this history. Please put in the chat. What are the different ways that you heard of, that you know of, that they prevented Black people from being able to vote? And so Black people had to fight from 1870 to 1965, almost 100 years, to be able to get that right to vote through the Voting Rights Act, which was enacted in 1965. And when that act went through, and it was very difficult, people died, people were killed, people were beaten, people were jailed. There's a long history of the torture, of the assaults, and of the strength of our people as they fought back, the courage of our people, the strategic brilliance of our people, fighting back and getting this right to vote through this Voting Rights Act. And almost immediately, the state and the vigilantes began to push back. And so most recently, we have the attack on the Voting Rights Act where the Supreme Court indicated that there was no reason to clear these districts, right? To clear the maps that say when we can vote, where we can vote, what place we can vote in, almost like a Berlin conference of our communities, making up these borders that they switch whenever they want to. And so the Voting Rights Act said in those places that we know are racist, you can't just make up these lines. You can't just draw these Berlin conference lines wherever you want to, that you're going to have to go and make sure the federal government approves. And the Supreme Court said no. They backed out of that. And immediately states responded and made it even more difficult for Black people to be able to have voting power by splitting us up where we had a lot of our folks and by packing us into smaller containers where we wouldn't be able to have as much representation. And now we see in this case, Louisiana versus Calais, where the court has now said, hey, not only have we already said that you can draw these maps and you don't even have to check to make sure that they are not racist, but now if you decide they are racist and you want to sue, you can't do that anymore. You can't use race to prove discrimination based on race. We're going to have folks talk more about that. But it's important for us to understand, to have a little bit of that context in history, to understand why this is so critical. You're going to hear about the way in which that Calais case just sent shockwaves through this country and caused, both on the state level and on the level of individuals, a complete backlash, a power grab, an effort to return people to pre-1965 Jim Crow. So I thank you so much for joining. By joining, you indicate you show, you demonstrate that you care about this issue, that you understand that Black power is essential, right? As our great brother Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael at the time, when he uttered those words for the first time, Black power, that Black power uttered by that brother born in Trinidad, who then grew up in New York City, that Black power also comes through the ballot box. And so, want to now turn to our panel, and I'm going to share the names and a brief description of each of our panelists, understanding that we will be putting in the chat other information, a more thorough bio for each person. And I will do it in the order that I will be speaking and talking with them. So first we have Inse Ufot, who is an organizer, a strategist, and political commentator. Let's give it up for Ense. Let's give it up for Ense. Thank you so much, Ense, for joining. Dr. Stacy Grant, who is joining us, the international president and CEO of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated and chair of the NPHC Divine Nine Council of Presidents. Let's please clap it up. What's going on, Dr. Stacy? Thank you so very much for joining us. So glad to have you on with us. We want to bring on our good brother Cliff Albright, who's been fighting the good fight for a long time and really helping to steer us in the way we need to go, co-founder and co-director of Black Voters Matter. Thank you so very much. And Amara Enya, who is the co-exec of the Movement for Black Lives. Thank you so very much, all of you, for joining us. We really appreciate it. We understand that you have, you're in the fight. You're in the fight. So we appreciate when you're here, able to talk with us in this urgent family meeting, as I like to call it, so we can talk about what is happening, because we know that we're really in a critical fight. So let me start with you and say, the fight that we're in right now, we know that that it's important for Black immigrants to be in this fight. That goes without saying. And I know you're going to let them know why it is important for us to be in this fight. But can you also talk to us, because you've brilliantly led a team that registered 800,000 plus folks in Georgia. You know what it takes to get real movement that builds real power on the ground. So can you talk to us about why it's important for Black migrants to be tapped in and engaged, and then some of the strategies that we can be looking at as we're moving power forward?
Yeah. Well, one, hi, Nanas. It's so good to see you. Um, Let me, so that I don't get accused of not answering the question, I'm gonna start by saying it plainly, that Black immigrants, Black migrants are not guests in this fight, that we are not adjacent to this fight, that we are in fact inside of it. And there are tons of examples on this Zoom call, but um, I mean, full stop. Many of us also come from places where people know exactly what it means when power gets concentrated, when the courts get captured, when elections become theater, and it is a joke. When people are told to be sort of quiet and grateful. And so when we talk about the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, it's not an abstract legal problem. And a lot of the discourse that I've seen, like publicly, has really focused on that. Um, we are literally talking about whether or not Black people in this country have the power to protect our families, our neighborhoods, our schools, our wages, our papers, our futures, each other. Um, that the ability to sort of participate in our elections, like the gutting of Section 2, wasn't just to allow them to bring in their racist gerrymandered maps. I mean, that is absolutely one of the consequences, but it is for them to be able to racially discriminate with respect to every aspect of our elections, and we should all be really concerned about that. Um, I've been sort of trying to get comfortable with just speaking the truth as I see it. And what I will say is that I do think that this is a moment where we all have to sort of tap into our superpowers and what we are good at. And as I think about the Black migrant experience, I think that if not the migrants themselves, certainly their parents and at least one or two generations have been removed from violent, nonviolent coups and what it looks like when democracies have become destabilized. I think the solidarity strategies, the survival strategies, the rebuilding strategies that come from that, and the learnings that we all have access to are going to be very, very valuable in this moment. And quite frankly, the most successful community strategies that I have seen start with respect, not panic, not shame, not vote or else, not vote harder, but respect. Do you know these people? Do you know where they are? We have to meet people where they already gather. And see, I feel like people like to use that language, like meet people where they are, but no, literally. And it's not, if people are not in the churches, if they're not in the mosque, if they're not in the hair salons, if they're not on the soccer fields, if they're not in the malls, if they're not on the campuses, where are they? And do you have access enough humility to enough humility to be where the people are? Where are you humble enough to organize through where you actually find the people? Because that is our power, that is our strength. And we need trusted messengers and not just translated materials. I often find myself having this conversation in the world of the world of Spanish speaking immigrant advocacy, as well as the sort of Asian American diaspora. But language access matters absolutely, but translation is not the same thing as trust, right? And so as we are trying to fight today's monsters and build the future that our families deserve, like having trusted messengers who can get to it feels really, really important when we're trying to organize these Black communities, American born and otherwise, and make your ask concrete. People are looking for guidance and leadership and not just rhetoric in this moment. Give people something to do. And if you don't have something for people to do, then I would ask you to think about like orienting your strategy, and asking whether or not it is designed to meet the moment that we're in,
Mm.
because people are absolutely looking for something to do. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely looking for something to do. We'll talk about what some of those to dos are, but you've given us great strategies. Translation is not trust, is a t-shirt. I will put at the bottom hyphen and say, because we know that some people are not as clear and meeting folks where they are and not in a way that's humility, like not thinking about so you're getting down low to talk to the toddler, right? Not that kind of meeting folks where they are, really being where they are. And Dr. Grant want to talk about that because we know that sororities are sororities, such as Zeta Phi Beta Incorporated, our fraternities, that they are a part of that work. Our people are there, including Black migrants, Black immigrants, obviously. We're on the campuses. We know that there's so many ways in which the Divine Nine are engaged in this voting piece. Why is it if people are listening, folks like my sister, who's an election protection attorney, who's in a Black sorority, what should we be saying about what people can be doing and why it's important that we jump in and not just look at this as like a Black American issue?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to echo everyone's gratitude for creating the space. Thank you, Nana, my dear sister and friend, and Baji, and everyone that's here. See my buddy Cliff, who's going to talk about some of the other work that we're doing. I mean, it's a joy to be in our space because no matter what happens, they can't steal our joy. So, in addition to being the international president for Zeta Phi Beta and representing the Divine Nine as the chair of the Council of Presidents, I'm a Jamaican woman who has a lot of West African influence and a little bit of Latino too. So I understand the diaspora and the need for us to realize that, as my sister Nisa said, we're not adjacent to this, we're in it. And we understand the importance of being engaged. As 501c7 organizations, we mobilize, we educate, and we protect the vote. We are on the front lines making sure that our members are doing exactly what all of our founders intended when all nine of our organizations were established, and that is to uphold the highest ideals of scholarship and service, sisterhood and brotherhood. And what does that look like? Not standing somewhere preaching from a mountaintop, but getting into the community on our college campuses, in the communities that we serve as trusted, credible leaders. The Divine Nine is number three when we think about the Black church, when we think about our civil rights organizations, and the millions that have come through membership in our organizations. So we want the listeners to know that we want to partner with organizations like Baji on the ground, making sure that we are hosting forums so that our community knows what they're voting for and who they're voting for, what's on the ballot. It's more than just a political party. It's about a democracy that is crumbling. The work that we see that is necessary now is going to be done by us. No one's coming to save us. We're going to save ourselves. We come from strong stock. My father is a strong Garveyite. So I know what it is to revolutionize our thinking. We can't do the same thing that we've always done and expect a different result. We have to come together from all walks of life, all experiences throughout the diaspora, and we all have to be headed towards the same goal. And that goal is, as citizens in this country, the home of the brave and the land of the free can't be for some people. It has to be for all people. So count us in on the ground. D9 Stronger Together is not just a hashtag or a slogan. It's what we do, how we live. And one tangible example is go to 1 million Black voters rising. We are working together in a collaboration, 1 million Black voters rising. Spell it all the way out. That is how we're coming together to make sure that we're mobilizing the vote and educating and working with organizations like LDF on voter protection and partnering with Baji to get the word out. I won't steal the thunder from my brother Cliff, because he has some more information on how we're partnering over there to make sure that we're all coming together at a time where our ancestors are depending on us to not let the sacrifice of their blood be lost on this generation's hands.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. And folks, we know that we've got to stay connected. We've got to move together. We've got to see ourselves as one Black diaspora fighting like hell to keep this power, to expand, as I said, this power even beyond what we have right now. We certainly aren't trying to lose it. I want to go next to Cliff. Brother Cliff, looking at Black Voters Matter, the flagship in terms of pulling our communities together and matching, bringing together what we're doing in terms of community relationship building with what we're doing in terms of power pushing. Talk to us about Freedom Summer, because we in the Freedom Summer. Some folks may know Freedom Summer from the 1960s, but talk to us about the Freedom Summer we're having right now in the year of our Lord 2026, as my auntie would say.
Hey, thank you, Nana. It's so good to be on the panel with so many of my good friends and powerful sisters. So yeah, you talked about that history of voting rights and how we're in this moment now where we're literally watching our voting rights being snatched from us. Of course, there was the Calais case a few weeks ago that essentially gutted what was left of the Voting Rights Act. And so, many of us came together and we put out the call the same way folks in Selma put out the call in 1965. We said, look, we need to gather, we need to come together, we need to be outside again. And so, we did a thing in Montgomery that included, hundreds of partners, organizations, including Divine Nine, partners. And, we basically put out our claim that we're not just going to settle for this. We're going to be fighting for our voting rights. We're going to be fighting against these racist maps that are being passed all across the South. And we're going to be mobilizing in this upcoming election, in November. And so we said we're calling it Freedom Summer. Like you said, it's a throwback to the Freedom Summers of Mississippi in 1964. But it's this modern day Freedom Summer that's involving mobilizing folks to get registered, to get information about voting, to push back against some of these maps. The way that we've seen people organizing in some of these states at the state legislatures, and in a couple of cases have successfully blocked some of the racist maps that they've been trying to pass. So we wanted to make it clear we weren't just talking about one day of rallying or one day of action. We're talking about an entire summer with activations all throughout the summer and into the fall, all the way up until November, and then after November, because the work doesn't stop on election day.
It sure don't. We always got to remember the after November. This is the part. After the election is over. I would sing it to after the morning after, but I ain't gonna make you all suffer through my singing. But yes, after the election, after, right? We've got to make sure that we keep pushing, but also plug into the Freedom Summer and what is happening now. I know we're headed towards Georgia and we're heading all across the South and even got some stuff happening in Nueva York and in New York, right? Making sure
June
that is
20th.
occurring.
That's right. New York on June 20th. It's a whole week of action around Juneteenth. And so Georgia on June 18th as they start their special session. Harlem on June 20th. As we celebrate Juneteenth and as we continue the fight. And then in other places where there'll be satellite actions. So yes, Juneteenth is the next stop on Freedom Summer, but after that, there's going to be a whole bunch of other stops. But you can find out more at freedomsummer2026.com. Freedomsummer2026.com. And if I could just say real quick, Nana, this
I'm
battle
about to say real quick
includes.
because I got to get
Real,
Amara. Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. No, I'll say. I just wanted to make the point that this involves everybody, all of our community, immigrant, migrant communities, other communities, all segments, because none of us are free until all of us are free.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's appropriate that I turn to my good sister, Amara, as we talk about freedom, because this really is about power. And I know that for so many of us, and I'm gonna say us because I'm included, that are on, looking more towards this world that we want to have, right? And thinking about what democracy really means, and thinking about this experiment, which I will call from the from the Voting Rights Act experience, excuse me, a 60-year experiment, right? A group project that seems to be going awry in this moment. But how do Black voting rights and Black voting power fit into this conversation about dual governance? First, just take a moment as we are rounding out to just help people understand what we mean by dual governance, and then folding in how Black voting power is a part of that.
Yes, thank you so much, Nana, and thank you to all the other speakers. I'm glad I got to hear them all first and learn from them as I continuously do. So it's just good to be sharing space with you all. I'm just going to do two things, Nana, to your question. One is provocation, because I think we have a responsibility at this time, not just to articulate the immediate threat, but actually to expand the imagination of our people beyond the interventions that we think are necessary. And that is that while the inclination and the call has been to protect and defend, we have to ask, protect and defend what? The systems here in this country, whether we are immigrants or Black folks born here or came here, were always insufficient. And so while there's a lot of talk about protecting democracy, what we had was not something, at least our assertion, that we need to protect. In fact, our responsibility is to imagine what real democracy looks like. And that involves looking beyond the limits of this system, these systems, and setting about to building them. So the charge of the provocation is for us to resist the urge to get into, we're just protecting this country's institutions and protecting what was, because what was insufficient. It was insufficient for Black people, and because there was a refusal to make it sufficient for Black people, now everyone can realize and recognize and seize how insufficient these systems are. So that is the provocation. When we talk about dual power and co-governance is arguably more of, some would say, more of a reformist approach. Co-governance means that we need to be included and participating in the processes that govern our lives. So that means that we work to get people elected, but we also work after the election to make sure that they are advancing legislation, policies that support our vision for ourselves. That is primarily what co-governance is about, and we believe that's important. Dual power is revolutionary. Dual power means we are building alternative parallel institutions that actually reflect our values for the purposes of those institutions, those structures, replacing the ones that we know have not worked and were not constructed with us in mind or with our interests at heart. And so we at the Movement for Black Lives take dual power and co-governance very seriously, because we believe that we cannot operate solely from a reactionary standpoint, meaning when something happens, we're constantly racing to try to address it, lurching from one crisis to the next. We have got to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture for us is not simply going back to the way things were. The bigger picture for us is building the institutions and structures that actually affirm our human dignity. And that requires, yes, co-governance. It requires dual power. This is a revolutionary moment, and that is part of our responsibility to advance with our people at this time.
Thank you so very much, Amar, for lifting that up, the conversation around co-governance, because certainly, even as this system is crumbling, either because the Epstein class is taking a hammer to it or because it's crumbling under its own weight, we know that we need to protect our people. We need to defend our people, that we need to do all that we can to not just have the building crumble and crush. And at the same time, we know that we always have had other institutions, other ways of being with each other in community, so that we don't have to feel that all is lost, right? That we do have ways that we build with one another, and that the more we build with one another, the more we are able to both hold this system, to talk back to the system, to put people in that we know are going to be pushing the policies, making the decisions that are going to support our communities, but we also know that it helps us to build those institutions that we must build. We know how this country started as we look at this 250th anniversary of empire, right? So if it starts ugly, it don't suddenly, this country's not a butterfly. It's not starting off as a caterpillar and suddenly turning into a beautiful butterfly. That's not what's happening. We see what's happening, but we know that once again, as Black people, we are part of the determiner of what's next. And we need to step into that sacred role that we have as Black people to determine the what's next. So thank you so very much, Amara. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Dr. Grant. And thank you, Ense, for sharing your wisdoms, your strategies, sharing ways that folks can plug in, sharing the call for us to do more. Let's clap it up. Let's show our love for our folks. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Folks, those of us who are immigrant rooted, we know that when we look at this system, when we look at the people who are in power, when we look at the people who are trying to take Black power away, we know that we have come into a burning household. It was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "I'm afraid that I've brought my people," talking more about Black American folks, right? That I brought my people into a burning house. And there's been an effort by Black people to continue to figure out how to put out these fires, and in some cases, how to build other houses. And some of us have brought ourselves into a burning house. When I think about my father, who came here in 1966, who left back for Ghana in 2000, who's now 85 years old. And I'm telling you, every day he is texting, shaking, traumatized, thinking to himself that he gave birth to his children, and now his children and grandchildren are in a burning house. And then also seeing what is happening in Ghana and the ways in which this country and the elected leaders in this country are setting fires to our houses, as they have all over the globe. And so this is not something that we can say we're not going to be a part of. This has no impact on us. It has impact on us in the houses and the rooms that we're in right now within this country. And it has impact on us in the houses and the rooms that we used to live in, that our family, our friends, and our loved ones still live in. This is our fight. We're going to turn now to looking at the conversation on the state level. And so we have Dauda Sese, who is the founder and executive director of the Louisiana Organization for Refugees and Immigrants. Thank you so very much for joining us, Brother Dauda. Really interesting as someone who's come lives in Louisiana around this Calais decision and how that has impacted you and the work that you and Lori are doing, as well as our communities. Pierre Uimana, so glad to have you here. He is the lead membership organizer with Florida Immigrant Coalition, FLIC, who is a great partner of Baji's in Florida. So glad to have you here. So glad also to be with Haria Tarragan. So glad to have you here, Haria, from Mississippi, Mississippi. I still think of that whenever I hear that word. But look, a place that was serious and has serious connections of Black migrants fighting right alongside Black Americans when we talk about Black voting rights. She is the director of advocacy and policy with the Mississippi Center for Justice. And then our good sister, Amber Sherman, who is a favorite policy organizer who is joining us from Memphis, Tennessee, where we know so much has happened in terms of the fight on the ground with respect to Voting Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. Please, folks, let's clap them up. Let's make sure that we show them lots of love as we talk through what has been happening. And so, Dauda, I want to start with you as someone who has an organization that has been, was part of the Calais case, as part of Power Coalition, right? Really integrally involved in this fight as it, pertains particularly to Louisiana. Please talk about the work that is happening in Louisiana. And I know it's unfair because I'm only giving you like 4 minutes, but talk about the work happening in Louisiana, particularly the work that Lori and Black migrants such as yourself are doing.
Thank you so much, Nana, and thank you to the panels that I've discussed earlier. And we truly appreciate you all and for the joy, the leadership, and the talent you bring into everyone here. My name is Dauda Sise, the founder and executive director of the Louisiana Organization for Refugees and Immigrants. I'll stick with that hot for now. I was so many hot in this ecosystem, but I'll stick in that. Um, Many of us, especially the Black migrants and immigrants, many of us came to this country because we believe freedom, we believe in freedom, representation, and the idea that every voice matters. That's why the current attack on the voting rights, and then also on our democracy, deeply concerning. In Louisiana, we definitely have been at the front line with our partners and colleagues like Power Coalition, Vote, Voices of the Experience, etc., etc. We fought hard to get a second majority Black congressional district that elected Cleo Fields. That struggle for a secondary for a second Black majority district never simply about just drawing the maps. It was about whether Black community will have a meaningful opportunity to elect leaders who understand our experience and fight for our interest. But after years of organizing, we finally succeeded and we got it. But recently, and everybody's talking about the Louisiana versus Calais, what happened? And that was overturned. And immediately after that, we have election where early voting has already started. Our governor what? Suspended the congressional elections. As you can see. But guess what we did? We showed them that the power is there. May 16th, collectively, we defeated 5 constitutional amendments. That shows that when we organize, we mobilize, we win for our community. We all came together. It's a clear message we are sending that we're not going to let you all take the power that already belongs to the community. The other thing I wanted to mention, for too many, we are seeing right now how our democracy is under attack. And all of that is under, and authoritarianism is high. And all of this is happening what? Under the disguise of anti-immigrants. Anti-immigrant has been used to what? To promote authoritarianism, and then also to what? Take away our democracy and our voting right and our right to belong. And this is concerning because many of us Black migrants, we have experienced authoritarian government. We have experienced political violence, military rule. But here is our home. We have what it takes to protect and strengthen and defend our democracy for generations to come. And in order for us to do that, I just want us to be reminded that where there is no vision, the people perish. So we have to develop a strategy, a movement. Without strategy, lose momentum. Strategy without organizing produce little change. So how can we take our power back? The question before us is not simply how we react to this moment. The question is how we build lasting power to protect our democracy for generations to come. I want to leave you with 3 actions that we all can take beginning now or tomorrow. First, let's organize locally and consistently. Democracy is not protected every 4 years. I just want us to know that. Louisiana has proven that. We have election here almost every quarter. It's protected every day in our neighborhood, in our school, churches, mosques, city halls, and community organization. That's how we protect democracy. It's not every 4 years or every 2 years midterm. It's every day. Second, let's strengthen Black solidarity across the diaspora. African Americans, Black immigrant, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latinos, wherever it is, let's invest in our collective power, share strategy, and deeper relationship. The challenges we face right now are connected, and our response must be connected as well. We've seen how the copycats with Project 2025, so our response should be also deep in our collective. The third, and then I close. Third, move from participation to power. Votes. Yes, we have to vote. What get us to this mess? It's nothing else. It's a direct result from the people we put in power.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. It's a direct result for the people we put in power. So vote up and down the ballot is very essential. As Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if one of us is not free, none of us are free. So thank you all, Nana, for giving us this opportunity. And thanks to everyone here as well that have contributed.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate you, Donna. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Turning to you now, Pierre. We know that the day that Calais came down, it's almost like the Florida legislature already had the maps written to create havoc. And so, again, talk briefly, please, about what that has meant for the work that you're doing and what people can do to support.
Thank you, Nana. Good evening, everyone. My name is Pierre Uwimana. I am with the Florida Immigrant Coalition. And yeah, like the name says, Florida Immigrant Coalition is an organization that, does advocacy for immigrants in the state of Florida. And as you all know, authoritarianism, consolidation of power is really, happening in Florida. And that's why we are having all these leaders who are believing in that moving to Florida, including our president. And so that's the challenge we are facing. In Florida, we are seeing battles over redistricting, gerrymandering, and electoral maps being manipulated. Black communities being, divided across districts and packed into single district and diluting our collective voting power. And it's really happening, and we are losing every single day. But at the Florida Immigrant Coalition, we believe that civic engagement is a year-round responsibility. Like Dauda said, we conduct citizenship drives to help eligible immigrants to become U.S. citizens and gain the right to vote. We organize voter registration efforts, civic education workshops, candidate forums. We do voter outreach and, mobilize people to get out to vote and, through different campaigns. And we work to ensure that immigrant voices are not only heard during elections, but are also included in the decisions that shape our communities, every day. One lesson that we have learned is that successful community engagement starts with relationships. People become involved when they see trusted community leaders, faith leaders, neighbors, and family members, all over the state participating. Storytelling, leadership development, mutual aid, cultural events, and other, issue-based organizing, they help bring people into the civic engagement process. And that's what we are doing. When people understand how policies affect their daily lives, from housing and education to healthcare and public safety, they are more likely to engage and take action. It's not easy in our state, but we have seen changes happening from other states. California, about 25 years ago, it was the same in the same situation where we were, but they fought hard, and that's what we are doing in Florida to keep mobilizing our people. So Black communities have been at the forefront of organizing around redistricting, voting rights, civic participation, and many of us are immigrants, and we come from countries where democracy has been challenged, where political participation has carried risks, and communities have fought hard for representation from countries where we come from. And those experiences really strengthen our commitment to building power, in the state. And we are not resting until everyone is mobilized and everyone is getting out, to vote. Those who are eligible, we help them to get citizenship pro bono, and they become eligible to vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Pierre, let me move just quickly so we make sure that we can hear also from Haria and Amber. We'll come back if we have the capacity, but thank you so very much, folks. Let's clap up the work that is happening with Pierre and in Flick and what Flick is doing. And let's go to you, Haria. Talk to us about Mississippi and what is happening with the Mississippi Center for Justice.
Yes, thank you, Nana. So, Mississippi is an interesting one. We are the blackest state in the country. It is also the state where it is the hardest to vote. It is also the state that has the biggest number of electeds to lose because of the Calais decision. We have the most Black electeds in any state, and we stand to lose the most Black electeds because of the Calais decision. But Mississippi is showing up strong. MCJ and our partners, including Black Voters Matter, after the big rally in Montgomery, rallied in Mississippi on the day that they had set to hold special session to redistrict. We had 6,500 people show up to show the power, to show that people were not going to let their power go so easily. I think something that has come up so many times and something that I want to reiterate is that people do not seek to restrict the power of a group that they do not fear. And the reason that they are trying to restrict the Black power to vote is because Black people are trying not only to break down the systems that were created to keep us down and keep us where we are, but we are fighting to build the house that we want to live in. And it is one that is inclusive. I think a lot of people are scared that if Black people take power, there will be some sort of reverse racism. But the reality is when Black people build spaces, it is inclusive, it is beautiful, and it is filled with joy. And that is what we are working towards in Mississippi and what we are working towards across the state. And I want to echo what everybody said here, but one thing that I also want to mention is that this work also has to do with us being counted. A lot of this work has to be also about the census. We are, especially Black immigrants, are not counted in the same numbers that we actually show up in the United States. And a lot of that is due to fear, but in the last census, New York had a competition between immigrants. They said, hey, how many of my Nigerians are going to show up in New York? I bet there are more Ghanaians than there are Nigerians in New York. I bet there are more Jamaicans. And that competition made it so that groups actually participated. And I think we need to do that everywhere. In the census, we need to show how many of us there truly are, because what it showed when 6,500 people showed up in Mississippi on that Wednesday was that you can try to redistrict us however you want. But there are so many of us here that if you move the maps one way, you will be sacrificing maps another way.
Right.
And so as the state with only one Black congressman being the Blackest state in the country, if they try to redistrict that, guess what? They're making others turn purple. And that's what we are showing them, that the Black power that they are trying to restrict is already here. It is a matter of us building the house we want to live in, but we are building it. And we need to vote, but we also need to create that future and that vision for what we want to look like.
Thank you so very much. I got a t-shirt that I'm making that says Black math breaks maps. Right? We're going to do some voting without borders. You ain't going to Berlin conference us. That's not what's going to happen. Thank you so very much, Ari. I appreciate that. And want to go now and round us off with Amber. Amber, can you take, a couple minutes, which we know will be more than a couple, but a couple minutes to talk about Memphis, what's happening in Memphis, how that connects in terms of a Black diasporic project of people pushing back and saying, hell no.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Nana. So I think one of the biggest things that's different from Memphis, and Tennessee from other places is that although we did pass these congressional maps, Memphis is definitely fired up. Like we're fighting back, but Memphis is also actively under a federal occupation still. We still have thousands of federal agents and National Guard troops marching up and down our streets, posted at gas stations. And so we're doing a lot of education for voters around, going to vote when there's police presence or vote when there are National Guard troops out. So you know what to expect and knowing that, they can't go into a polling place, knowing what your rights are so you can defend yourself, because a lot of folks are afraid to go vote. And we have a lot of folks in the immigrant community that we're translating different things for so they understand how redistricting is affecting them, because we were split into 3 different congressional districts. And so our city was split into 3 different districts, that some of which go all the way up to Northwest Tennessee and border the state of Kentucky. And then one of the districts also goes all the way to the bottom of Tennessee and borders Mississippi and Georgia. And so you're covered with completely different areas of mostly rural voters, but there are a lot of immigrants in rural areas. And so we're doing a lot of planned outreach around canvassing and phone banking to reach out to those folks who most likely are citizens and can't vote, but they're not being, considered. And I love the comment you made about Black folks breaking maps, because there's a lot of Black folks who aren't being counted in the maps that they created. And I think that that's one of the biggest advantages we have, is that the maps that they use to really try to dilute our Black vote is really going to backfire on them, because there's a lot of Black folks in places that they don't think about. As somebody who went to school in Northwest Tennessee, I know there's a lot of Black folks in Northwest Tennessee who don't get reached out to because it's considered a red state. And so they just think that we shouldn't reach out to voters or they think that we're going to have low turnout. And so they just don't invest in Tennessee or in Memphis. And I think that's one of the biggest things we're going to see changing is that one, we're going to be reaching out to those voters. And two, we're going to see people excited about voting. Like we've seen record numbers in South Carolina and Mississippi. I think we're going to see those same record numbers all throughout Tennessee because the districts that they created were spread so far across the state that, you know, there's people who are going to be voting who have been excited to get a chance to vote for someone that they think could win. And so, you know, a lot of folks are energized around that. And we're going to be really using that energy to make sure folks know who's on the ballot, like looking up the candidates because they all changed. So make sure you look up all the candidates. And then also making sure folks take a friend with them, making sure people, you know, let their neighbors know to check their status because their congressional district could have changed even with being one street across from someone. Like there are people who are neighbors who across the street, they're neighbors in a different district because it's
Right.
literally that, you know, surgical of how they divided it. And so that's the main thing we're doing. And if people want to join us and support us in any way, they can text We Matter to 25225, which is BVM's number, and we make sure to get them connected to Memphis Actions.
Thank you so much. Can you say that again? Text what to what, and hopefully someone will put in the chat.
Yeah, you can text We Matter to 25225.
Thank you so much. Yeah, but you know, I literally am looking at these maps and I'm thinking of the Berlin Conference. I'm thinking of how you talk about neighbors being divided, families being cut through, right? And now that becomes the map, and then we're supposed to operate with that. And we know we got to break those maps, right? And we know we got to break those maps. And we know that Black math has the power to do so. So thank you so very much, Amber. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Harya. Thank you so much, Pierre. Thank you so much, Dowda. Let's clap them up, folks. These are folks, our folks who are on the ground, making sure to make stuff happen, making sure that this co-governance that we're talking about as we look towards dual power, where we are relying on ourselves, where we are seeing and building institutions that prevent us from having to rely on their institutions, right? But protecting and defending our folks in the meantime. All right, folks, how we feeling? Let's put in the chat how we feeling about what we're hearing so far, the ways that we can plug in. I'm hoping people are feeling the need, right? Feeling the urge, feeling the desire to be connected. All of the things that we see with the invasions of the body snatchers, everything we see happening with the bombing of Gaza, with the bombing of Nigeria. Like people to act like that didn't happen. Even the World Cup, right? Like who is in charge makes such a difference for how we exercise our power. And so we know that this is an important issue that we need to deal with. And I want to for us to close out thinking about the piece of this that is us working together, right? We have in this country 22% of Black people in this country are either born outside this country or people like me who are born to people who were born outside this country, right? They used to call us first gens who were born in this country. Now they call us second. Don't ask me how this happened, but they're either first gens, people born outside this country, like my parents and some folks that you've heard from here, or people who are children of people born outside this country. We are 22%. One out of every 5 Black people in this country are us. We cannot sit this out. We also have to have a deeper understanding of of what Black Americans have been through, right? A deeper understanding of what this fight for racial justice for Black people, for human rights for Black people, for human dignity for Black people in this country has meant. And we've got to figure out how we're making that connection. And so I'm so thrilled to bring on now our brother Vic Mensa to help us to talk about that piece, that connection, to talk about why this is important, even as we look to a world where we have more freedom than we do bureaucracy. Vic Mensa is a musician, is an actor, is a filmmaker, is a founder, is a philanthropist, and, you know, is more than just that pretty face. Is definitely talented, but also a thinker. And so I'm so glad that you're joining us, Vic, to help us to think, because there is a cultural part of this. And as a brother, I was thinking about your upcoming film, African. It's funny because my brother calls my son African. He's half African American, half Ghanaian, right? He calls him African. So I was like, oh, look at that. There's going to be a
Oh,
story
that's funny.
about you. But
That's funny.
anyway, thinking about, and you're in Chicago. So thinking about like some of this diaspora war piece that we
Mm,
know comes from both sides and
for
how
sure.
we step beyond that to what we're doing.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Nana. It's an absolute pleasure. Um, 1 in 5 Black people living in America is an immigrant or of an immigrant family. So when we talk about immigration, we're not talking about someone else's issue. We're talking about Black America in totality. Same token, Black issues are immigrant issues because the immigration system is being fed by the same anti-Black policing that feeds the prison system. The police ain't finna wait for your national identity when they start shooting. I'm Nigerian. You don't understand. No, they gonna shoot. So Black immigrants need to be concerned with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. Black immigrants need to be concerned with all the ways that Black Americans are under attack. The same beast is deporting us indiscriminately. Black immigrants are about 7% of the non-citizen population, but more than 20% of people facing deportation. So it's like it's not just a border issue, it's a policing issue, it's a prison issue, it's a surveillance issue. And this new Jim Crow doesn't always come wearing a white hood. Sometimes it comes as an ICE detention, a deportation, but it's all different doors of the same house. I'm in Chicago right now. When ICE came through Chicago, I think it really exposed a lot of division within the city where I saw that people on different sides of ethnic lines felt like each other were to blame, which is actually the premise of the African film that you mentioned. But ultimately, who profits from it? Who benefits from our exploitation? I mean, to whose benefit is it for us to be divided? The diaspora wars is a constant, thorn in my side. You know what I'm saying? But like at the end of the day, it's no different from COINTELPRO tactics. It's no different from CIA tactics to divide and rule the continent, to create arbitrary borders between peoples that speak the same language, that are of the same descent. The way that Nigeria as a nation was carved by colonial power and people were separated by these borders is very similar to the way that Black Americans and Black immigrants are separated by imaginary borders. You know what I mean? I love when Kwame Nkrumah says that I'm not African because I was born in Africa. I'm African because Africa was born in me. And as African people in America, it's our duty to have the utmost homage and respect for what Black American people have struggled through and continue to struggle through in order to create so much opportunity for us as immigrants. Um, the foundation laid by so many of the elders and ancestors before us, and the blood that's been spilled for the right to vote. It necessitates, with all the opportunity that we experience in this country, it necessitates our involvement. Like we have to be concerned with that. And the idea that we are a separate people is manufactured division that serves a colonizer at the end of the day. That doesn't serve us. You know what I'm saying? So I'm honored to be a part of this conversation. I think it's a brilliant angle to take because we have a lot of communication to do amongst one another to just advance the education. You know, there are many understandable gripes between Black American people and African people and Caribbean people, and there have been many misunderstandings, all for the most part really a result of media manipulation, narrative warfare that's waged against us to feel inferior, to believe we are inferior, to believe that that our brothers and sisters are inferior, be it our brothers and sisters in Africa or our Black American brothers and sisters. We've all been taught by the same master manipulator that the other is lesser than. When the truth is, we're stronger together at the end of the day. Necessary for us to be together. So thank you for having me in this conversation, and I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so very much. Let's give it up for our brother Vic. Thank you, thank you, thank
Hey,
you.
thank
Please
you.
share the information in the chat about African, because we got to make sure that this film happens. You know what I'm saying? We got to
I
be
will, I will,
contributing.
I will.
We got to be making sure that it occurs. I really appreciate you. Appreciate just your insight and the fact that you're bold enough to talk about it and the way that you talk about it. It's really in a way that is healing. It is in the best traditions of those Black people from all over the continent, the Caribbean, South America, all the places that we are that have understood that we need to move as one and have a greater understanding of what our power really is. Because this is a battle for power. This is not a battle for anything less than power and liberation. So thank you so very much, Vic. Again, let's
Thank
clap
you.
him up. Thank you, thank you. So my people, did you hear? Are you clear on where we are and what we need to be doing? Let me hear it if you are. Let's put it in the chat. Let's show those emojis that we are clear about where we are right now. This is a critical moment that we cannot miss. This is a moment when we have to put aside our thoughts. If you're one of our people who has come to this country and you have visions of doing what my father did, leaving and going back home, I'm telling you, that man WhatsApps me every day, frantic about what is happening with this regime, what the regime is doing in this country, where his children are, where his grandchildren are, where his siblings are, his nieces, nephews, friends, loved ones, and what is they're doing all over the world, right over the world, in Gaza, in Sudan, in Haiti, in Ghana, in Nigeria, just everywhere. He sees what's going on and he's urging, like he's making calls, telling people, hey, you've got to be a part of this project. Don't just think of 40 years from now. Think of what's happening right now. We know that we who are here, who may not be thinking about going home, who are like, this is my place. I'm here and I'm here. That we have to understand that if we're here and if we're real about that we have to participate in this work to build the power that we need to block the consolidation of power by those who would eliminate us from the planet and to build the world we need and deserve. And yes, on that road is this road of electoral power, is this group project that we have to make anew, that we need to expand, that we need to move forward as we build what we know is really what we should have, which is something that the people who built this, the Epstein class of the time of Thomas Jefferson, because that's all they were, was Epstein class, it was the Jefferson class then, that they cannot even imagine what it is that this country really needs. We can imagine it. We know. We have that understanding. Our ancestors have given us blueprints, and we have the power to be able to exercise them. But we also need to survive, to make it, to thrive, to be able to have the capacity to exercise that kind of power. And so I'm hoping that you'll plug into BAJI, which you can reach out to us, particularly on this issue if you want to throw down on the ground, at policy@baji.org. Hopefully someone will put that into the chat. If you want to get more information about BAJI, please go to our website, baji.org, BAJI.org. If you want to learn more about BAJI Action and get into some action with us, please go to BAJIactionfund.org, and you'll find more information about what we can do with our communities and how we move this forward. You could, of course, follow us on social media, including Instagram @InstaBaji. Make sure that you participate and connect up with all of the different folks and organizations that you heard from here. When we follow up, we'll share information and resources that they have for us. This is our moment. This is our time to know what the vision is and to understand what place voting power has in the execution of that vision, the achievement of that vision of a truly free world where Black people are free and therefore everyone is free. Thanks to all of our guests, all of our panelists. Thanks to the BAJI team and all that you did to bring this together. And thanks to you for joining us. Have a Black-tastic day. Thank you so very much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye, folks.